So a few weeks ago, I put out a video on the Outland TIE Fighter, a weird variant of TIE that really only appeared in The Mandalorian, that was designed to be more versatile in its landing environment and basically nothing else. And in working on that video, I realized there was another TIE variant I never did a video on, the TIE Striker. So I figured today we could talk about the weird, semi-experimental atmospheric TIE Fighter that is the TIE Striker. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, we all saw the TIE Striker on screen in Rogue One. It played a pretty big role in the atmospheric battle during the Battle of Scarif. But what is the history and capabilities of this fighter? Why doesn't it really appear anywhere else? Well, we're going to dive into that today, but let's start out with the numbers. Like all TIE fighters, the TIE Striker was designed and manufactured by Sinar Fleet Systems, who designed the entire line of TIE vehicles. It was a little over 17 meters long and 11 meters wide, making it about the same size as a standard TIE fighter, so size isn't its big advantage. Where its advantage really comes in is its speed in atmosphere, where it could go 1,500 kilometers per hour, which is significantly faster than the standard TIE LN. Since it didn't operate in space, and TIE fighters usually don't have these anyway, it didn't have a hyperdrive, but it did have a pair of ion engines that propelled it through the atmosphere and a set of repulsor lifts that kept it aloft. Now, where this fighter really shines is its armament on top of its maneuverability, and we'll talk about that a bit later, but let's talk about its armament first. So the primary armament of the TIE Striker was 4 fire-linked LS 9.3 laser cannons, which served as the fighter's primary weapons. They were forward-facing and could be linked with the pilot's HUD to allow the pilot to independently target these laser cannons, which is pretty standard for a TIE fighter. The thing that's interesting is the number of them, 4, which is double what a normal TIE fighter would have. On top of that, there was a pair of HS-1 heavy laser cannons that served as the fighter's secondary armament for engaging heavily armed targets. But if the target was very heavily armed, it could then use its bomb chute, because located on the bottom of the cockpit of the TIE Striker was a bomb chute that could be used to deploy proton bombs. Primarily the VL-6179 proton bombs, to be specific, which is a standard proton bomb used across the Imperial Navy. Which is interesting. Most TIE variants are Imperial Navy projects first and foremost, used on Imperial Navy vessels and in Imperial Navy facilities, but the TIE Striker, being designed primarily for atmospheric operations, fell more under the purview of the Imperial Army, which sort of spearheaded its development and deployment. So the TIE Striker is formally labeled a heavy air superiority fighter that's designed to really only work in an atmosphere. Now, it is worth noting that the TIE Striker is not incapable of operations in space, it's simply less effective. The TIE Striker could operate in space and could be used along with regular TIE LNs from something like a Star Destroyer, but the elements built into this fighter designed to make it very effective in atmosphere fighter combat made it sluggish and power-hungry when operating in a vacuum, in which case you would just prefer the cheaper TIE LNs. So the TIE Striker mainly found its way into Imperial facilities, defending large Imperial bases that could afford to have their own dedicated TIE squadron to only operate at that base location, which is why we see them, for example, during the Battle of Scarif, which is at that time one of the most important Imperial military facilities in the galaxy, so it would make sense that it would have its own dedicated defense squadron of TIE Strikers. That being said, well, they do crop up here and there in books and such. It's the only time we ever see the TIE Striker on screen, which might give the impression that it was an experimental vehicle that was incredibly new, and while it does have experimental tied to its name, it's actually quite old by the time of the Battle of Scarif, having first been seen during Empire Day parades on the Second Empire Day in 18 BBY, so it's very sort of clear that this fighter's been around for a while, at least in an early development stage, if not in a fully deployed capacity, especially seeing that they were publicly displayed during a parade 18 years before the Battle of Scarif. But beyond the Battle of Scarif and a few minor mentions here and there, the TIE Striker didn't have a massive impact on galactic history and never really cropped up anywhere else, making it kind of this interesting fluke because, as it's described, it's significantly better in atmosphere than the TIE LNs. And while it is a little bit more expensive, its capabilities are impressive compared to its standard TIE Fighter competitor. So it would make sense that we'd see these more, but we never do. like I said, beyond the Battle of Scarif, they almost never crop up. So why exactly does the Empire not deploy this TIE fighter? And I think it's primarily a lack of versatility. While this fighter can fill a variety of roles, from a bomber to a strike fighter to an air superiority fighter, which is what it's primarily designed for, it could only do that in a very specific environment, and in general, the Rebels like to use hit-and-run attacks, where they would come in, hit a target, and then leave. If they knew that your starfighters were more or less limited to operating within atmosphere, they could flee to orbit after carrying out their strike, and it would become an easy escape route for Rebel forces fleeing following a raid on an Imperial facility. And it would make sense that Imperial leadership would not want to sort of kneecap their own fighter defenses by locking them into an atmosphere, and instead transition over to the slightly cheaper, albeit slightly less effective, TIE LNs, which could be fielded in larger numbers both in an atmosphere and in space. At the end of the day, the TIE Striker is a very interesting and unique variant of the TIE Fighter. We don't ever see anything quite like it. And I think it was worth mentioning because, like I said, we've covered most other TIE variants, and this one just kind of slipped under the radar for me. If you'd like to learn about another TIE Fighter variant that didn't see a ton of action, but was rather unique, the Outland TIE Fighter, which we saw in The Mandalorian, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like you to let me know why you think the Empire didn't deploy the TIE Strikers quite as frequently as they could have. Do you think it really was because the Empire simply opted to use the TIE LN more because it was more versatile in the environments it could fight? Or do you think there was another reason why the TIE Striker never really cropped up after the Battle of Scarif? And if you have anything else like this to be covered in Star Wars or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.